I'm Loki Karuna, and this is TRILLOQUY. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm going to start by naming, acknowledging, and celebrating the life of Marcellus Khalifah Williams. I wasn't aware of his impending murder by the state of Missouri until about an hour before his execution, about an hour before it happened. Dell keeps a better eye on the news than I do, and he let me know. And when he told me about this, it felt like I was losing a member of my very own family. I sort of interpret it as just deep empathy for our human family, for the human race. But of course, deepest condolences to his direct relatives. I've been doing a lot of chanting for the safe spiritual travels of Marcellus and for his family to have strength. I'll say more on that subject in the TRILLOQUY following today's dialogue with clarinetist Seunghee Lee, also known as Sunny Kang. Seunghee is a Grammy-nominated musician, a Grammy voter, a very successful entrepreneur, and even an expert golfer, as I learned in our conversation. She has an album out called Intermezzo that we dive into and talk a bit about, music of composer Michele Magnani. Seunghee and I also get into her relationship with the Grammys as an institution. We talk about her journey away from music and back to music, thanks to the music of Michele Magnani. And we talk about lots more. Huge thanks to Seunghee for taking the time to chat with me. To get you into my chat with Seunghee, I'll share a little bit from the opening track of the album Intermezzo. Seunghee Lee is featured here with the Manhattan Chamber Players in a work by Michele Magnani called Executive. I have to say, I find this music really refreshing. I'm not one to listen to clarinet music every day simply because it doesn't make its way to me through the algorithms in the way that bassoon music makes it to me, or piano music, even violin music. But I've thoroughly enjoyed exploring this album and revisiting the beauty of the clarinet as an instrument. And I hope that you'll do the same. I'll have a link for you to explore in the description. Again, Seunghee Lee here with the Manhattan Chamber Players and music of Michele Magnani, a work called Executive, to get us all into my conversation with Seunghee. Hope you enjoy. And more from me on the other side.
Every recording project that's put out there by an artist has a very deep meaning to each one of them, and it has a very special place in their heart. And so you never know what's going to happen with your project until you really work it, because nobody's going to come knocking on your door. You have to really go out and rally for it. And have you listened to my album? And I think this is the part where I, as a classical musician, didn't get training in classical music training, because we're always used to be like, listen and anyway. So I got involved with the Recording Academy back in 2016, and by then I was releasing. I just recorded my fifth album. It's called Solace. Solace is I go through these 5 stages of grieving. It's a personal project, and it just felt so much meaning. It has so much meaning to it. And my recording engineer, Mark Obor, he said, "Oh, Seunghee, this is so beautiful. You should submit it to the Grammys." And I said, "What is that?" And I was hoping that somebody would pay attention, but of course, like I just said, nobody's going to come knock on your door. You really have to go out and, work at it. And so back in the day, to become a voting member, you have to get a recommendation from somebody within the industry that's already been a voting member and have a really good standing. Those rules have changed in the recent years. And now the current rule is that you need to have 2 recommendations from people in the industry, a voting member status. as well as prove your credits on online, like Spotify or Apple Music, with your name on it. So they want like 15 tracks with your name on it, 12 or 15. Um, and then you submit it, and that's how you get in. Um, there's really no magic secret. You just go online, go to the recordingacademy.com, and you say, how to become a voting member. And then you just, plug in all the criterias. And once you meet it, you're probably in. So there's no magic secret.
So it sounds like becoming a voting member requires being in the field. They want to make sure that peers are actually voting on various categories when it comes to awarding these Grammys.
Absolutely. So, everybody wants to be Grammy nominated, but a lot of people ask, they don't know how, right? How do you become Grammy nominated? So back in the day, I'm a very curious person. So I asked, so how do you get there? And so one thing led to another. Well, the best thing for you to do for yourself is to become a voting member, but because in there, you get to meet other passionate creators that it's really a building community within the music industry, and really connecting with all these people from all genres, not just classical. And in fact, I wish more classical musicians would inquire and join, because there's so much creativity and connections that you can make across genres, not just classical. Yeah.
I wonder how that has an impact, what you're talking about, people from different genres, how that impacts people who are going after those classical Grammy awards. Do you think it's good that you have blues singers and maybe rappers voting for classical albums? Is it a help? Is it a hurt? Something in between?
Oh, absolutely. Vote is a vote, right? And in fact, I think it's in your best interest to get your music out there outside of the classical, and get your music known to all people, because everybody is an audience. It doesn't have to be only for classical musicians. And I think, yeah, that's what I love about this, being a member of the Recording Academy, is that, oh my gosh, I am so humbled and so inspired by so many creatives that I meet through these networking events, at the Grammys itself. And you yourself just have to get out of your comfort zone and just go out there and try to meet people. And I know, as a classical musician, it's one of those things that I really had to, like, it's a big hurdle for a lot of us. Maybe not for the younger generation, but the older generation. We were just taught to just practice and earn your way by winning competitions and da 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 da.
Mhm.
But life is long, and I found a way to find my own path and my own passion.
Well, we're definitely going to get to more about you and your latest album, but just one more question regarding what you're talking about when it comes to that training of networking, of relationship building. If there was a way to incorporate that sort of training within a conservatory model, I wonder what you think it would look like. Would the assignment be to go to a party where you don't know anyone and come back with the names of five contacts? I wonder what ideas you would have to really cultivate that training.
Oh, absolutely. That's one definite way. I think within the classical conservatories and music schools, I mean, just start with your friends that are non-clarinet players or non bassoon players. Go across to people that are in percussion, or people that are doing composition. I mean, it's like, people are people. You don't only have to stick with people that because we're all afraid to be rejected. And so I get it, so we want to just stay in our circle and just be very safe. But I think one thing to start at school is really get to know everybody in school before you graduate. Before you graduate, you should get to know every one of them, and have some kind of something that you've done together, like concert or a memory together, because that memory during the school year will last for a lifetime. And of course, not everybody's that you're going to be spending a lot of time for the long run. But you never know, right? You got to go and say hello. Be the first one to go say hello. Hi, I'm doing this project. You want to join me? I think this is the part, like asking for something or being the first one to go across the room and say, hi, I'm so and so. I think that is a big lesson or big asset for young musicians to have before they graduate from school.
And that's actually a really great segue into what I wanted to talk about next, because when you go and introduce yourself, the way that you introduce yourself could change over the years or change depending on who you're talking to. I've undergone a name change in these past couple years. And I wanted your feedback on something, a question that I get a lot from artists. They aren't sure if they should use their given names or names that sound more familiar, names that are more searchable. I'll shout out a composer who I've worked with this year. Her name is Daishuan. She was previously known as Daisy, but these days, and as far as her professional practice, she does insist that people refer to her as Daishuan. I wonder how your name, or I should say your names, fit into this whole dialogue. I'm sure many people know you as Seunghee. A lot of people know you as Sunny. How do you engage the naming convictions when it comes to your own marketability and getting to know people?
All right, we're talking about something that's very interesting. I have so many stories to tell regarding how I came up with these two names. Seunghee Lee, as you know, is my birth name, Seunghee Lee. And as a clarinet player, that is what I go with, Seunghee Lee. And that's my graduation, my diploma, everything that's the legal name. Now, there was a point in time, I don't know if you want to get into this yet, but where I just totally left classical music altogether. I just quit music altogether because I felt a little bit of betrayal for all those years I've practiced and done at the music school. This is what I get, something like that. And after getting married and starting kids and my husband's job just taking off, and of course, like I'm not going to go leave my kids at home and go play a gig at night. so the long story short is that there was a time where I thought I gave up altogether. I'm never coming back. And then I started my new fresh life as Sunny Kang, as the golfer. Because like I said, my husband's job took us all over. We ended up in Hong Kong for about 10 years. And that's where I became really addicted to golf. And the mental side of golf is so much like classical music. And the more you practice, the better you get up to a certain point. And then, at the highest level, it's all here up, you against yourself. So anyway, that's the long story. But Sunny Kang became my whole life while I was away from music. And through that, I got to know myself even better because I became free to do whatever I wanted to do without this nagging voice about classical, like you didn't do this, you need to go practice, and all these voices in my head. I was able to leave it for. I thought I was done. I'm like, okay, be quiet. I'm not playing clarinet anymore. I'm a golfer. And so for me, it was a time in my period where it just fit, golf, Sunny, and I even like came up with that name just playing out on the course for a few minutes, and people are asking me, "What is your name?" And these are new people I'm meeting, and I didn't want it to say Seunghee because how do you spell that? No,
Sure.
it's SEU. No, not Ed. No. Okay, just call me. I look up in the sky, say, "Oh, just call me Sunny." It's a beautiful weather, Sunny. Kang is my husband's name, so over the years, people are Sunny, do you want to play golf? Do you want to play golf? And that's how I got the name Sunny Kang. And to answer your question about that, how does this apply to everybody else? I think life is too short. Go try it if you want to. If you don't like your name, um, there's nothing preventing you from changing your name or trying something different. The point is, you yourself have to be fully expressed, fully self-expressed with the name that you're given, or the title that you give yourself, or whatever the name you give yourself. But get a name that really represents who you are and your personality, and you are just free to do whatever you want to do.
Well, before you realized your freedom to do other things or things other than the clarinet, I wonder if you could talk about how those skill sets were really foundationalized. What growing up in Chicago, I wonder what resources or experiences you attribute to building the foundations of your career as a clarinetist.
Oh, growing up in Chicago is like the best place because it's very culturally very rich because of Chicago Symphony. And in the suburbs of Chicago, there are many great schools that have very excellent public school music program. And that's how I picked up the clarinet because at fifth, sixth grade, you're supposed to pick an instrument for band program or violin for orchestra program. And I chose the clarinet. And I moved to the US. I was born in Seoul, Korea. My first instrument was piano. But when we moved to the US, when I was 9 years old, I stopped playing the piano because we didn't have a piano. And I was around at the end of fourth grade. And then it took me about like a year to adjust. And then at the end of fifth grade, there was a band concert. And so, and I thought that was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to be up on stage and play clarinet. Play something. And the band director turned around and said, anybody wants to go, wants to play something next year, please go get this piece of paper signed by your parent and pick an instrument. And I just ran home and I said, Dad, my dad was home. And I said, oh, can I play an instrument next year? And he said, yeah, why don't you play the clarinet? I didn't realize he played the clarinet himself in high school. And so he
Oh,
could
wow.
teach me the beginnings of it. And so that's how I started. And of course, like I said, the public school program in music program in Chicagoland is excellent. And then, the teacher introduced me to John Ye of Chicago Symphony to take private lessons. And that's how I, started. And
That's
then, so
beautiful.
this, the Chicagoland uh, upbringing and the culture, very rich culture uh, of Chicagoland that I grew up in really helped me to shape my career.
Yeah, and a part of that rich culture includes local engagement of jazz and many other types of music. Considering how dynamic the clarinet is, certainly compared to the bassoon and other instruments, I wonder if there were ever any curiosities of engaging the clarinet beyond classical for you, or why did you stick with classical all these years?
Oh, oh, really good question. So in high school band, my band director, he was we had like honor band, symphonic band, we had jazz band, we had like orchestra, everything. And he wanted me to come and try the first he asked me to play oboe as well. So I played oboe in the second band. And then he goes, oh, Seunghee, why don't you try a saxophone and, try to do improvising. And so I picked up the saxophone and tried to play in the jazz band because, I do what my teacher tell me. I can't say no to the teacher. And so
Mhm.
I show up and to the jazz and, um, we're supposed to, he plays some beat around, and we're supposed to, at every eight measures or something, so we're supposed to get up, or at eight or 12, we're supposed to get up and improvise. And I've never done that. I don't know how to do it. And I stood up and I, it comes by, there's a saxophone player who's an excellent, jazzer, improviser. And then there's the trumpet player. And then here I am, like, I stood up and I'm like, nothing. Nothing came out of my saxophone. What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, I had no idea. And in hindsight, I wish I could have learned like how to be more free to improvise and not be so jaded into like just a classical clarinet. The point I'm trying to make here is that yes, I wish I could have done more in jazz field, but back in the day, because I was taking lessons in classical, I felt like you have to stick this way, and if you go outside of the boundary, then you're kind of diluting your thing. So although I admire those people that get up and just be free to play, I felt like I didn't know enough. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt embarrassed. So I never went back. So I stuck to clarinet.
Well, I mean, jazz may not be one of the areas that you branched off into, but there are several other areas that it seems like you branched off to beyond just playing the clarinet in a practice room. I wonder, as you engaged your conservatory training and gathering other professional clarinet experiences, how you developed some of your entrepreneurial chops. How did your non-clarinet ventures begin?
Yeah, that's also a long answer, but again, I want to keep. I know. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh
rambling. I'm
no,
so
this is
excited for
great. Thank
this.
you.
I'm so excited for this interview. And The entrepreneurial aspect of my career, it really came around 2000. Okay, I say 2013 because that's when my third album was released and I self-released it. And so 2013. So there was a good time for like 10 years when I was just playing golf, let's say 2000 to 2010, 11. And I got to learn so many new things, what other people do, how other business, now I'm living in Hong Kong where it's like a mecca of business
Mhm.
and transactions. And I learned so much from, what other people do. And so when it came time around 2013 to release my third album, my first two albums were released by a commercial label. And I learned so much from that experience, what to do, what not to do. And just because they're a record label, it doesn't mean they go out of the way to do everything for you.
Mhm.
And especially a clarinet player, as a clarinet label, it's like, of course, the pianists, the orchestra, they get the royal treatment as and I'm not sure whether they paid that much attention to my album. My point is, and so I thought at that point I said, I'm probably going to do a better job of promoting myself than giving another master to a record label and having no returns.
Mhm.
And at that time, I made so many friends through golf in Hong Kong that when that third CD came out, I sold over 2,000 CDs in Hong Kong. And at Hong Kong Records, I was on the charts for like 10 weeks because it was me calling people. Hey, Jane, can you please go by? I got a new album. You wanted to listen to how I play, right? It's really about enrolling people about your project and being very excited about all that you put into the project. And I think that was the eye opener for me, is that, oh my God, people are really interested. As long as you have a compelling story to go along with it, people are genuinely interested and genuinely want to support your work because they know how much time you spent on it. And I think that's when I got that wake up call. I'm like, oh my God, like I sold more than the record label. Why am I giving my my master to the record label, sign this piece of paper where I have no rights forever and ever across the galaxy? And like, so that was the beginning of my journey of creating my own company. And I have a slogan called "You are the company." And then from there, a lot of people asked me for sheet music. All these young kids and moms were asking me for sheet music to all these opera arias that I recorded on the
Mhm.
clarinet. And then I thought, oh my God, maybe I should just do like publish the sheet music and just convert the violin part to the clarinet and just so I ended up creating a beautiful package. It's like a box set, clarinet, clarinet and piano sheet music to go along with the Hidden Treasures CD. And yeah, that was, now I learned so much from that, and I published that one, and also Embrace after the album Embrace. Anyway, so yeah,
Wow,
sorry to
wow.
go rambling on.
No, I think that's really important information for people to hear, especially when you're talking about, signing away your masters and all of those things. Just to put a fine point on that specifically, would you advise people to self-publish, or is there something to signing with one of the major labels, especially as a classical artist?
Uh, okay, it's everything. There's nothing that is like a cookie cutter, formula.
Sure.
Every project is very different. If you are, I mean, you really have to know yourself. You have to know what you got and what you want to do. If you're one of those people that have a vision and you could already see how to market this, then you'll be foolish to give it to somebody else, because then you'll be very disappointed in what they'll not do. That your visions will not come into fruition through them. You might as well do it yourself.
Hmm.
Nowadays, with everything at our fingertips through the internet, if you have that entrepreneurial, character in yourself, why not try it? You don't have to do it with something so big. Just try something, and then through that process you learn. And it's that learning process. Of course, nothing's going to be perfect in the beginning, but it's that learning, one step at a time process. Over the years, you're going to gain a wealth of knowledge and save a lot of time for yourself, rather than relying on somebody else to do it for you. And I guarantee there are a lot of people that have the best interests in their heart for their clients and for record labels and all that. But at the end of the day, you got to know your work. I'm a clarinet player. There's no way that a clarinet CD will be selling more than a piano CD. It's just,
Sure.
you know what I mean? It's just, you just have to know where you are in the market, in the music industry, and then you have to kind of like assess on your own. Okay, where do I fit in? How do I do this? Am I going to do a better job? There's a lot of mental guidance that you have to do for yourself in order to get your music successful. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't go with a big label. Like if Deutsche Grammophon came and said, "Hey, Seunghee Lee, we'd like to release your album next," I said, "Yes, but chances are, I don't know if that's ever going to happen. But in the meantime, don't wait. You know what I mean? Don't wait around. Don't wait for people to, that big opportunity to fall on your lap. I mean, you're just going to be wasting a lot of time, and life is very short. It goes by really fast. So I'm a very practical person. So instead of waiting, I just do things on my own, and in the process, really have a lot of fun and enjoy working with other people, working with the graphic designer. Oh, how about if we add this and that, and just like really collaborating with other creatives that really like gets your creative even like exponentially greater, because you're collaborating with other great minds. And in that sense, you have control of your work, rather than relying on a manager, relying on a record label, relying on a publisher to do it for you. Because I don't know what's in that the contract that you sign with them, whether you have any creative control after they get the master. I mean, that's up to the individuals. But I just found that, oh my God, I have all these creative ideas. Like I'm having a time of my life just creating my own things.
Wow, wow. And I also understand, getting into your latest album, Intermezzo, which features works by Michel Magnani, it's clear in all of the material surrounding this album that the composer really rejuvenated your love for the clarinet, and you talked about how you had spent so much time away from the instrument. I wonder if you can talk about that rebuilding process. What was it like for you to pick up the clarinet again and to get the sound that you want to sound like back, to get your technique back up? I wonder if you could speak to that aspect of the work as it relates to this latest album.
Uh, oh my God. So that's like a loaded question, which I could like write a whole book. And as you know, I don't just answer one thing. I just go on rambling and create a whole story,
Which
but
is
I'll
just
try
fine.
my best. I'll try my best. Yeah. So his name is Michele Mangani, like
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Beethoven, Michele Mangani. He was and I first heard his music on Facebook back around 2010, 2011. And it's a clarinet music, and it's just so inviting. And you remember, like Facebook came around around that 2009, 2010, 2000. That's when it was really catching up. And I signed up for Facebook because I wanted to connect with my golf ladies and have a creative chat and all that. Anyway, so so then the feed, like, I all of a sudden heard this music, and it's called Executive, and I'm like, oh my god, what is that? And it's a clarinet player playing it, and I just couldn't stop listening to it. And I looked at who the composer was, because it's not something Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms would
Mhm.
write, but his name is Michele Mangani, and he lives in Urbino, Italy. And immediately, like, of course, you could like Google them and find out where they're from and how they are. And I got to listen to some of his works that he's a modern day composer. He's like in his late 50s or maybe early 60s. And so he's back then, that was like 10, 12 years ago. He was creating his own work. And that's when I met him. And it's just something about his work is so to the point, like relatable. It's very easy to listen to. And I don't mean the easy to listen to in a bad way. It's like,
Mhm.
it's so inviting. And there's no complicated multiphonics for clarinet or like
Right.
all these crazy runs that you have to do, which I think that's why I wasn't quite sure how I could stick around on the clarinet back then, when I was talking about I quit music, because I learned Corgliano concerto, I learned Nielsen clarinet concerto,
Right.
I learned all these difficult concertos. Where am I going to play?
Hmm.
Who am I going to play with? And it's just that's why I felt like, oh my god, like I spent all this time learning all these things, and like, what am I? It felt like a waste of. I don't want to say waste of my time, because then that would discount everything I did. But you know what I mean? It just felt like, why did I do all this for? Where am I going to go with it? And so, but then when I heard Michele Mangani's music, they're very short, like 2, 3, 4 minute pieces, and it's like, oh, I could play that. I could play that I could just, play that in one day. And it gave me so much inspiration. Like, what if and at that time, I haven't played clarinet. I haven't picked up my clarinet in years. And like, I had to take it out my clarinet and try to play it, because it was so beautiful, and it's just singing. I love the singing, the bel canto aspect of his writing that really brought me back into playing my clarinet again. And then I thought about, like, recording some of his pieces, because I was thinking about doing some more recording. So that's how I got involved, got to discover Michele Mangani's work. And he has like over 500 works that he's written for the clarinet, for other instruments, for band music, especially. Yeah.
I think it's important to note how attracted you were to this music, to his music as a clarinetist. But ultimately, the goal is to have people beyond the clarinet world and engaging this music. I wonder if that sense of an inviting aesthetic is something that you would consider present in this music for not only non-clarinet players, but maybe even the so-called uninitiated into classical music. Would this be a great way to introduce someone to classical music and from your perspective?
Oh, absolutely. He was born and raised in Urbino, Italy, home of Raphael, the
Mhm.
artist. And so he's so classically trained and brought up. His whole environment is so rooted in that classical, the culture and the genre. And, um, why? Yes, the answer is yes. I wish people would listen to more of Michele Mangani's work. It's not something that's so intuitive, it's not something like thinky, like Philip Glass, and it's not something that is so intellectually challenging.
Mhm.
In a really good way. I'm not trying to, downplay anything like that, but it really attracts people's ears, because the music actually says something. And I keep going back to the bel canto, the style of writing in an opera. There's a short opera aria. You don't know what they're saying, but the melody just sings to you. Da, 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 but the melody is just he's a master of writing beautiful melodies. And so actually, a lot of the flute players and bassoon players, trombone players, trumpet players, they all play his music. It's not just for clarinet. I mean, nowadays we transcribe, we arrange, we play other people's music. So yes, this is definitely a very good segue into classical music. If anybody wants to dabble in that genre, but music is, I just say good music is good music. It doesn't have to be a genre specific.
You've touched on this a couple times, and I want to unpack it just a little bit. This idea of so much of classical music, Western classical music, being a bit esoteric, as conservatory trained musicians, we're trained to really build up our technique, play the most complicated thing, the most technical thing as possible. But it sounds like you really have an appreciation for the side of the genre that is more about the beauty and less about how fast you can move your fingers. It sounds like it's something that we should inspire some thought around, generally speaking, when it comes to the genre overall.
Yeah, because ultimately, who are we doing this for? Right? Who are we providing the music for? It's for the audience. It's for the audience enjoyment. And there's a reason why the famous arias keep playing over and over again, because the audience loves it. As much as we like to show off our technique and all that crazy multiphonics and the runs and the jumps and all that, which is great for you, but if the audience doesn't understand what they're hearing and why they're hearing, and how it does it relate to this concert, then you lost them. And I think we got to be very mindful of who's listening to your music, and so you got to know your audience. And for me, I'm so blessed. I feel so lucky to have found Mangani's work, because I love playing his music, and people love listening to his music. I could play the Corleone Concerto, I could play the Nielsen Clarinet Concerto, but it's already been done so many times, and it just takes so much effort to put that kind of concert, just so that you could say, "Oh, I played the Corleone Concerto." Sorry, I should not even say that, right? Please, I shouldn't pinpoint a specific piece of work. But what my point is, those difficult standard repertoire that we're supposed to have under our fingers by the time we graduate from music schools may not be the best thing for the professional world if you want to go out and be a performer, because there's just to play a concerto you need a whole orchestra, and who could, unless you're Yu Jia Wang, or unless you're these top musicians, as a woodwind players, I don't know if any of us have that much opportunity to really go out and perform those pieces. So Mangani piece is an alternative where even young kids play it, and I feel like this is where he's filling in the gap between the rudimentary level of learning the clarinet, all the the etude books and all that, and then and then there's that conservatory Poulenc, Nielsen, Mozart, all that. He's filling in the middle for people that are want to keep playing the clarinet. Not everybody's going to go major in clarinet in a conservatory, but those people who just want to keep up their playing, even people that have retired and they just want to play nice music. This is the very sweet spot that I feel that Mangani's music really appeals to.
Yeah, and we definitely need more works in that category, because as you mentioned, not everyone goes on to be that professional musician, but that doesn't mean that we can't cultivate a community of people who play instruments and play them beautifully through the right repertoire. On this album, I want to congratulate you for bringing on board Stephen Beck. It's always important to have a really phenomenal collaborative pianist, but you also recruited Manhattan chamber players. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your engagement with them in creating this album.
Yeah, absolutely. Manhattan Chamber Players is fantastic. When I came back to New York in 2015, like I said, I lived in Hong Kong from 2010 to 2015. I wanted to start performing again, and I also do house concerts supporting other musicians.
Hmm.
supporting other organizations. Because I serve on many boards, they asked me to open my home, so I opened my home, and to support other organizations. And one of the concerts that I created, we're looking for some string players, and it's all recommendations. Who do you know? And then Manhattan Chamber Players' name came up through a really good friend of mine who gave me the recommendation, and I said, "Oh wow, they seem like a very fun group." And so, it's not the whole group that come, but I needed a string quartet or a trio or something, and then so I took, I asked some members of the men and chamber players to play with me back then. And, it's just a great group of people. They all have their own jobs, own groups, own, you know, uh, places that they play, but they come together. They've been friends, conservatory friends. And so they come together to create this Manhattan Chamber Players. And I just can't say enough good things about them. It's been fantastic.
Well, I hope everyone will go check out this album. But before I get into some of my closing questions, just logistically speaking, there are a number of people who I've introduced to Western classical music by giving them a CD, and their response is, "Oh, I don't have a way to play a CD." We're working for years in radio. I affirm that CD quality is often the best quality. But when it comes to me personally, when I'm buying physicals, I really prefer to buy vinyls because that's just what I love. But even with all of that said, it seems like CDs are still the industry standard. Do you have any guidance for any artists out there really trying to get their music out there regarding how they present their music to people?
Oh my God, that's another loaded question. Nowadays, it's mm, yeah, I don't have a concrete answer for that, but I know that you need to have many options for people to enjoy your music, and one of them is still producing CDs, and especially if you want to send it out to radio stations or get some reviews. Some of the reviewers still require a CD, and of course, and then um, of course, like nowadays, the amount of CDs that you can purchase has reduced a lot. Like now, you could purchase as little as 100, or maybe even like couple. But for the bulk price, you could go down to 100. But back in even a few years ago, it was like 500,000. And what are you going to do with all that, right?
Right.
And so, but it is a good option for you to have, because I noticed that older generations still would like to listen to CDs in their car. I know some people don't have a CD in their car, but you just need to create options for them. I think the streaming industry, I mean, that's we need to talk about that in a different time. But it's really not fair in the back end for the how much the musicians get from like Spotify and Apple Music. But it is what it is, what we have now. I guess if you could, again, this is where you have to put on your thinking hat. Become the entrepreneur. Like, how can I provide products of my music to people directly? So it's really the artist to fan directly. And some people really want to support you, so they download on Apple Music. But then, why would they download and take up the memories on your phone and your when you could just stream it for free online or SoundCloud? And so it's really, there's no definite answer. But I do know that if you do want to cater to your audience, you got to know who your audience is. And if there are a segment of your audience that do listen to CD, go and get that 100 CDs that just pay a little bit more and go through the whole production. I think especially for classical, it's just the mindset thing. We're just not past that, like it has to be this way
Yeah.
mindset. So especially if you're in classical, and want to be really seriously considered, you still have to produce CD, sadly.
And just buy an external CD-ROM drive that I have and I plug in when I need it. Just always a good tool to have. Well, beyond your clarinet playing, you have many other responsibilities. You sit on the board of advisors for organizations, board of directors. I wonder what your desired impact is in some of these spaces. You aren't playing in these spaces. What do you hope to achieve?
Um, Yeah, so yes, I do serve on many organizations, and when and it's a total privilege, and I'm so honored to be asked to serve, to be on the same room as these other board members who are intelligent, very well educated, and very successful in their own right, and are really supporting the arts as much as they can. However, they're not like they didn't go to music school like you and me. They're not classically trained, and so I feel like having a voice as a classically trained musician and knowing the dark side, knowing the ups and downs of being a performer or being a classical musician, always waiting for the next gig and waiting for that this and that. I feel like I would add that side as much as I can to the decision making, because a lot of these organizations make decisions based on the budget, based on what the popularity of the whatever program or even like that. But it doesn't really serve the artists themselves. And when you program, especially programming, when you don't have an innovative programming in your roster, I mean, I in the long run, I feel like you're going to lose people. And so, how do you engage like the board members or people that are artistic directors that are programming? How do you engage them so that you're like steering the classical music world into a path so that it can continue for a long time. So yeah, so I just wanted to bridge the gap between the institutions and give them an insight as to, although I say I'm just a clarinet player, but I know what it feels like to be stuck in a practice room and work for hours and hours and hours and things like that, and the how much I value all these other people that are working so hard to be mastering their instrument. And I just love being in that crossroad or that bridge, making that bridge so that at least there's one voice that they could hear from if they have an idea or something like that they could hear from me.
Yeah, sharing that perspective is completely invaluable. I wonder if there are any upcoming projects coming up later in 2024 that you're excited about or you'd like to promo.
Oh, well, this album took a lot out of me, so I don't have anything right now. But and it just got released, so but I will be going to Italy to perform at music festivals and clarinet festivals and things like that. And yeah, I am working on another project for next year, 2 years from now, and it's going to be big, and that might be my final product. but but yeah, so everything is in the works.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing from that and to enjoying your latest album, Intermezzo. I wanted to close by circling back to one of our previous conversations about the getting to knowing people and the schmoozing. You already mentioned that people should know everyone that they go to school with. I wonder if you can offer, again, as we close, any guidance for folks who aren't in school, people who may be invited to a gala or a post-concert reception. What advice would you give to folks who aren't quite sure how to interact in social settings toward their own professional goals and opportunities?
Yeah, that's so you can't change yourself overnight, right? It just and I think the most important thing for everybody to understand is that you got to be interested in other people. Like when you're at a gala, nobody really knows everybody. So it would be nice if somebody came up to you and say, "Hi, I'm so and so. What do you do?" It's like being interested in other people, then trying to be interesting yourself. I think it goes a long way. And as musicians, we're used to like being on stage, being, good job, always being praised. But when we're not on stage, how do you conduct yourself, right? And I feel like this is the time when you really give back and get to know your audience and really be interested in what they do, they do their life, and be the listener in that sense when you're not on stage. So I think that would, break the ice. And I think it would say a lot about that musician that, oh, wow, she's really interested in me. And then I think the person that you talk to will probably come back to your concert because you created the bond between the two.
The Intermezzo of composer Michele Magnani to wrap up my chat with clarinetist Seunghee Lee. She was accompanied there by the Manhattan Chamber Players. Shout out to all of them. And thanks again to Seunghee for taking the time to chat with me. I really enjoyed our conversation and hope to have another one. After we got done recording, we talked a little bit about the relationship, the similarities between golf and music, golf and so-called classical music. So I'm going to have to have her back to unpack that because she definitely has some really interesting insights there. But again, huge shout out to Seunghee, and thanks for joining me here on the TRILLOQUY podcast. All right. All praise be to Allah in every situation. Those were the final written words of Marcellus Khalifah Williams, before being put to death yesterday by the state of Missouri. I haven't done a whole bunch of research on what he was convicted of or the reasons people are calling him an innocent man, because honestly, for me, none of that matters at the end of the day. I don't think there's a single reason for the state to put someone to death. There's absolutely no justification for it, as far as I'm concerned. I mentioned his last words because they're filled with honor and praise, and I think that's very important to note. Maybe, even a sense of completion of life's mission in that single statement. I'm nobody's Muslim. I think that's clear. I'm very much a Buddhist, and I can and will affirm that his last words actually affirm a very important philosophical aspect of my spiritual practice of Nichiren Buddhism. The 13th century monk Nichiren Daishonin famously said, "How can we possibly hold back our tears at the inexpressible joy of knowing that at the moment of death, not just one or two, not just 100 or 200, but as many as 1,000 Buddhas will come to greet us with open arms." There are many ways to translate that and many ways that people have interpreted that quote. But what I've always gathered from it is that death associated with confidence, death associated with peace, death associated with mission is the manifestation of a life associated with those things: confidence, peace, mission. I also want to quote the late 21st century Buddhist philosopher Daisaku Ikeda, who said, "An awareness and understanding of death raises our state of life." Let's focus on that quote for a second. An awareness and understanding of death raises our state of life. Okay, so by now we're all aware and understand the death of Marcellus Williams. We understand the why, even if we don't agree with it, as of course I don't, and we are well aware of the systems that are in place that led to his murder by the state. What are we to do with that awareness? What are we to do with that understanding? And how can we use that to raise our own state of life now that he's gone, as Ikeda Sensei said in that quote? My personal thought is that we need to make sure that we aren't becoming desensitized to the violence of the death penalty, violence by the state. This is not normal. This is not okay. I'm personally convinced that the man was innocent based on what I understand was a lack of evidence proving that he a lack of evidence proving his guilt. I want to make that clear. I have no reason personally and individually to believe that he was guilty because, as what I've lightly read, the evidence is not there. But let's say just for a moment that whatever he was convicted of was something that he actually, in fact, did. Let's just pretend that that's the case. Does that mean he deserved to die? What crimes are worthy of the death penalty? That's what I need help understanding. Is there anything that should be punishable by death, especially in the United States? My answer to that question is absolutely not, unequivocally. Unequivocally. And as musicians and as music lovers, as music appreciators, music supporters, well, however we exist in this specific field of music, we have to figure out our role in this dialogue. I'm thinking about the opera Dead Man Walking that the Met Opera staged last season. I didn't see it, so I can't speak to it at all, but I was told that the opera began with a rape and ended with an execution. So in that very black and white framework, I can understand how some people might be challenged by the notion of abolishing the death penalty. I don't, it's not my goal to gaslight or name the experience of women and other gender marginalized folks when it comes to sexual violence. That's not what this is about, especially because I have not seen the opera. But with all of that being said, what I imagine is that the man who committed that horrendous, unforgivable crime within the framework of that story was humanized. And I salute the Met for doing something like that, something that engages that dialogue of the death penalty one way or another. As an industry, we do the song and dance of so-called DEI, but that's so much more than what we do for folks on death row. You know, we talk a lot about access to spaces, but what do we do for people who can never have access to any space like that, especially those folks on death row? I believe that every single life is precious. I even extend that to non-humans as a vegan, but certainly every human being deserves life and a path toward a happy, meaningful life. And there's a role for us in realizing that for all of humanity, whether we can see it or not. I affirm that a proverbial timeout is the best thing for some people, not solitary confinement, not imprisonment that cages up human beings and just leaves them there to rot, not utilizing human labor to create more capital, and you aren't paying these people who live in these prisons fairly. I'm not advocating for anything like that, but I do advocate for time to recuperate, time to gain understanding and knowledge, and time to figure out how to create value in our society. I am so ashamed of our legislature for allowing something like that. And as my personal values and missions evolve, as I become older, this is something that I think we need to put at the front of the conversation more often. And I haven't even gone into the school to prison pipeline. I haven't talked about how likely it is for Black men to be incarcerated and potentially murdered by the state in the way that Khalifah was. It's a deep issue connected to lots of other conversations, and it's not going to go away until we engage it head on. I'll briefly share that there was a practitioner of Nichiren Buddhism once upon a time, not many years, probably only about a decade ago now, who was a judge out on the West Coast. She chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as I do. She chanted every day to never have to put someone to death. But there was one person for whom the death penalty came under her judgment, but she didn't give up there. She kept chanting that something would happen so that this person would not have to be put to death. And sure enough, before the execution, he was exonerated. Now, I share that story without much detail to simply share that there are judges and law enforcement folks and all those sorts of folks, bailiffs, whoever, who do value life. Absolutely. I want to acknowledge that. I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush. But if there is anyone who's meeting this fate, that means there are leaders who are refusing to end this practice under the guise that, quote unquote, we the people support it in some circumstances. I don't think you should either. None of us should be okay with this. And I believe we have to stand against these ideologies in our words, through our social media, in our creativity, in our jobs. This needs to be coming up at every staff meeting, in our actions, whether it's opposition to the death penalty, whether it's opposition to the 21st century genocide that we're seeing, war around the world, class inequality that we are all, most of us anyway, oppressed by. And even, as I tend to focus on here, a colonial approach to the concept of classical music. These are all things that we have to stand against. And I'm sorry that standing against the death penalty did not result in life for Khalifah. I've really been thinking about him and thinking about the family. And I hope this can really activate more people. I mean, it's definitely activated me, reactivated me in a certain way. And I hope it can for you as well. Something that I talk with, I say to Dell all the time, is that this sort of Judeo-Christian conditioning over folks in the United States, maybe it's just resulted in folks needing a sacrifice, needing someone to die before action happens. I'm thinking about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We have Marcellus Williams. I mean, is that a part of it? Is that what we're doing? Does a person have to die for good to happen? There has to be another way. I think there's another path we can take. We are in a huge mess here. And it's not Democrats or Republicans or anyone in between structurally who are going to clean it up. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to all of us. It's our work to do, and we need to do it. On September 24th, we all lost a member of our human family, and I mourn him. I hope you will too. Talk to y'all again soon.